On June 5th, just 2 months before my 52nd birthday, the unimaginable happened. I had a heart attack while I was on the deck, drinking a cold beer while waiting for the grill to heat up. At first I thought I had swallowed something wrong, but as the pain worsened, I knew something was seriously wrong. The agony was unbearable and rapidly escalating, as if someone was standing on my chest. My heart was pounding out of control. I collapsed onto my knees and then onto my back, struggling for breath. I was really grateful for my mobile phone because it was the only thing that saved me. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone and dialed. I don't remember if I said help or anything else, but within a few minutes there was a loud crash and suddenly people were all around me doing things to me. I must have blacked out because the next thing I recall was being in a hospital bed and being informed that I was being prepped for surgery. "Mr. Davis, can you hear me?" A voice asked. "We need to perform a heart bypass on you immediately. Do you understand?" I signed my name to some kind of form. I had no idea what it was, nor did I care. I just wanted the pain to stop. "Is there anyone we should contact?" A nurse asked. "My wife? Is she here?" I asked. "No, you were alone when the paramedics arrived. I'll have someone check back as soon as possible," she told me. "Now try to relax. We're on our way to the operating room, so you should be fine at this point." I didn't really understand what was happening, but I was just told to breathe deeply. When I woke up, it was all over. The doctor said my life didn't flash before my eyes and I didn't have any out-of-body experience. Thankfully, I didn't see any bright light at the end of a tunnel. I just woke up in the recovery room to a middle-aged man with a clipboard. An older nurse was standing over me, taking my pulse. She asked how I was feeling. I tried to speak, but my mouth was too dry. My mind was working, but my body wasn't cooperating. She said not to worry and that I'd feel much better in a couple of hours. Just get some rest. She was right. The next time I woke up, I felt a lot better, yet worse at the same time. There sitting next to my bed was my wife of 30 years, Sarah. "Are you okay?" When I got home, the neighbors told me what happened. "The doctor said you're going to be just fine." "I'm fine," she said, smiling. My mouth was still very dry, so when I tried to speak, I could barely get the words out. "Leave me alone," I began to say, but it came out softer than a whisper. "What are you trying to say?" Sarah asked, leaning closer to hear me. "Get out of my sight and leave me the hell alone," I said, loud enough for her to hear this time. "Honey, don't try to talk. Just lie back and rest." "I'll be right here," she said, touching my cheek. At that moment, my heart rate shot up, my face flushed, and a nurse rushed into my room to see what was going on. "Leave me alone," I now shouted at her. "You're going to have to leave. You're upsetting the patient and raising his vitals," the nurse told Sarah. "But I'm his wife," she stammered. "That may be so, but you're upsetting him, and I need you to leave right now." "Chris, I'll be in the hallway if you need me," she said, looking back at me as she was ushered out of my room. I motioned to the nurse and she came close. "No visitors, please," I told her, "and only discuss my—" "Mr. Davis, I'll put a sign on your door saying no visitors allowed. The doctor will only discuss your condition with you. Is there anything else I can help you with?" I shook my head. "If you want to relax and get some sleep, that's fine. The doctor will be in later to check on you. It's hard to get any rest in it if they're not giving you injections, taking blood, or trying to give you some medication." I thought to myself, night sleep, yeah, sure. The doctor came in and said everything had gone according to plan. They had done a triple bypass and when they went in, they found evidence of other damage, as they called it, from an earlier attack. I told him that it probably happened about 5 months earlier, but I thought it was just stress. "You're very lucky, Mr. Davis. If you hadn't had your cell phone, you might not have made it." He explained that you really need to get your weight and blood pressure under control. If you don't get your weight and blood pressure under control, you'll be back here before you know it. I want you out of bed tomorrow morning. You need to start walking at least 10 minutes every hour. After that, we'll see how it goes. How long will I be laid up? I asked if he was asking when I could go back to work. He said not for at least 3 months. When you go home, you'll need someone there at all times, at least for the first couple of weeks. After that, we'll play it by ear, depending on how you feel. I won't be. I'm doing rehab at home, so I'd love a recommendation for a good facility. There's a great one about 8 miles from here with a fantastic workout area and a dietitian on staff. He said, all I need to do is have our business office call and set it up. Just a heads up. It's a bit pricey, but it's got a great reputation. You've had a lot of visitors, and a few of them got pretty upset when they found out you'd asked for no visitors or phone calls. He gave me a puzzled smile and said, I guess you had your reasons, but I'd hate to be in your shoes when you go home. He walked out the door. Who said I was going home? We need to get you in the gym and set you up with an exercise routine. But first, we're going to start you on a good nutritional program to get your weight in line. It's not going to be easy, but if you follow the staff's instructions, you'll see results. So with that said, I'll take you down to the gym so you can get started. You've got me for the next 3 months, so do with me as you wish. I bet you're wondering how I got myself into this condition. Well, the reason is simple. I'm too good at what I do for a living. I'm not trying to boost my ego or brag. It's just a fact. I have a knack for finding the best people for the job, making sure they're fully trained, and then letting them do what I hired them to do. I learned a long time ago that I couldn't do it all. I tried for a while, but it almost killed me. Now I sit back and let others do their jobs. I give them a project, tell them what results I'm looking for, and then I step aside. The customer is looking for and then lets them get on with doing what they do best. Life is good. I'm the sales manager for a consulting firm. I've been with the company for 26 years, and a few years ago I became a silent partner. No one, and I mean no one, including my wife, knows this. 8 years ago, I took a 20% cut and paid to buy into the company. I've got 6 more years left, and I'll be a 50% owner with my buddy Paul. Sounds like I've got it together. Well, I do when it comes to my business life. However, my personal life is a different story. I've got 2 kids who are a bit too comfortable and a wife who's always looking to climb the social ladder. My youngest, David, barely made it through college and was pretty upset when I didn't offer him a position at the company. I just told him that family and business don't mix. I didn't want to be the one to fire him, but he didn't work out. He did find a nice girl and got married, but he still hits me up for money about every other month. I guess I never learned how to say no. Him, but no more Natalie. She's 3 years older than David. She's a professional student. I think she's on the 7-year graduation plan. She's changed her major 4 times, and I'm not sure what it is now, but at the start of this school year, I told her she had 1 semester left to finish. After that, she was on her own. She went to her mother and complained. When Sarah approached me, I just told her, enough is enough. You kind of see where I'm going with this, don't you? I'm done being the nice guy. I'm 29 and I shouldn't have to support them any longer. I'm not going to. They're now officially off my payroll. As for my wife, Sarah, that's a whole other story. About 7 months ago, I was feeling a little frisky. Our sex life had dwindled over the last year. I was trying to jumpstart it to where it should be. I'm not looking for sex 5 times a week, but it would be nice. Well, where was I? Oh yeah. After dinner, I gave her a glass of wine and asked if she was in the. I said with my best smile. I'm a little tired tonight, and you know, I have that charity event to plan for. Her reply was, come on, Sarah. It's not like I'm asking for a kidney, just a little loving. She was hot. I was sweating. And finally, she didn't want me lying on top of her because I'd gained too much weight. Why don't you climb on top, babe, and ride me like you used to? I suggested. You know, I have a hard time getting off that way. Sarah whined. Okay, just forget about it, I said, getting off the bed and walking toward the bathroom. I asked, where are you going to take care of yourself in private so I don't have to hear you complain about how unpleasant it is to have sex with me anymore? I said. As I shut the door, I handled the situation myself, so to speak. When I was finished, I headed to our spare bedroom. She called out, "Now, where are you going?" I replied, closing the door. She was right. I'd gained a lot of weight over the last couple of years. I guess I should be taking better care of myself, but I'd gotten lazy. I'd taken up golf, but that was more just to bring in new business. I didn't like it and really wasn't good at it. The only good thing that came out of it was the upside of joining the country club was that they were always hosting some type of activity. I was gone the next morning long before Sarah even got up. I was still angry, but it mellowed a little. I guess it wasn't all her fault, I said to myself, as I sat at my desk, eating a donut and washing it down with my second cup of coffee. It was about 10. I got an email from Sarah at work at 30. There was no apology or love. She just said she wasn't in the mood. Instead of talking about it, I left in a huff. I put my coffee down and tried to think back to the last time we had a good session. It was a quickie, a hand job, or her just lying there waiting for me to finish. I finished it. It had gone downhill. It seemed that Sarah would rather do without than do it with me. That's when it hit me. Maybe she's getting her needs met elsewhere. That's when I decided to push the issue and see what happens. What the hell? What was she going to do? Cut me off? I replied with the following email. Whatever you're doing with whoever, you'd better. If you want to stay married to me, stop right now. When I hit send, I knew I'd get a reaction, but I thought she'd at least wait until I got home. Sarah sent a scathing email, accusing me of cheating and saying that I was the problem with our sex life, not her. She also said that since I got winded just walking up 2 flights of stairs, what kind of sex life could we possibly have? I guess I was expecting a bit more from our sex life. Maybe she should get an oxygen tank and put it next to the bed for the nights I wanted sex. Those were some of the nicer comments she wrote back. Her final comment was that maybe I should move to the guest room permanently, so that she wouldn't be held responsible for me having a heart attack. My response was short and to the point. I didn't go home for supper that night. I ate with my partner Paul. I thought about not going home at all, but I figured that would make matters even worse. Sarah was waiting for me when I came through the door. She yelled, "How dare you? How dare you accuse me of cheating?" I said, "I have never been unfaithful in all the years we've been married. If you're not getting it from me, you must be getting it somewhere else." I wasn't backing down, so I said I was tired and that I was going to bed. I assumed she'd stop yelling at me, so I told her I wasn't sleeping in our bedroom anymore. She said sarcastically, "What's the point? You don't want me there and I don't go where I'm not." I said, "Climbing the stairs, sleep by yourself and see if I care." "I'm not going to stop you," Sarah replied, shouting as I climbed. I was fully clothed and passed out when I finally awoke. Looking at my watch, I saw it was 3:30. I told myself I couldn't let her get to me like that as I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. Looking in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw. I told myself I've got to get it together as I stripped off my clothes, which were soaked with sweat. I slept in until almost 10. The next morning the house was quiet. Sarah had already left, so I called into work and told them I was taking a vacation day instead of relaxing at home. I went to my doctor, who told me I needed to lose at least 70 pounds and that my blood pressure was sky high. He prescribed me something to bring it back down. "You've got to start taking better care of yourself, or you're asking for trouble." I've heard it all before. At least for the last 4 years I've tried to give it up, but it's just not something I like to do, so I haven't. I told him I'd try to lose some weight and take the meds he'd set me up on. I'll be following up in a month. I had a follow-up appointment and left with a chart showing the calorie intake for 2 different diet programs. I put them in the back seat of the car. Things around the house got pretty cold. We stopped eating together and only spoke to one another when we absolutely had to. It was the end of our second month when we started talking to one another again. I'm sorry, there was no We only talked about superficial things or the kids. On Saturday we went to the annual charity auction at the club. Chris, are you going? I said yes, I'm going. Well, we might as well go together. Is your tux cleaned, pressed and ready to go? She asked. I replied that it was. It was a quiet ride to the club. At the club, we didn't talk about anything important until I took the lead. I just said sorry as I drove on without looking at her. I've missed you and I don't want to fight anymore, Sarah replied. That was all we had time for as I pulled up to the club. I gave the attendant my keys and he gave me the claim ticket. I walked. I opened Sarah's door and offered her my hand. She took it, smiled, and my heart skipped a beat. We walked into the dining room and found our table. The dinner was okay, but the wine was a lot better. I'd ordered 4 bottles for our table, and along with the other 3 couples, we toasted to our good health. After dinner, the band started playing, and people began to dance. I danced one slow dance with Sarah, and that was more than enough for me. She asked if I minded if she danced with a few other men, and I told her I'd be fine with it. I walked around the room and was visiting with a few friends when I caught sight of Sarah on the dance floor. I was watching them dance a slow dance when I realized it was the man from the office. His arm was around her waist, but it was moving lower. Before long, it was on the center of her back. 2 dances later, it happened again. I followed them outside onto the moonlit patio, but they didn't see me. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told me everything when he bent over and kissed her. I'd seen enough, so I left before the auction started. The parking lot attendant didn't ask anything. I just said, I want to go, and drove off. I was about 30 minutes away. When my cell phone rang, I turned it off and put it on the seat next to me. I had been home about 2 hours when Sarah stormed in. What the hell is your problem? She yelled. Why did you just up and leave me? I replied, I thought the 2 of you wanted to be alone. The dark-haired man, the patio, the kiss, I saw it all. I told her that was nothing. She shot back that nothing was happening. Well, I care to differ. Sarah, I think you're making a habit of letting men feel you up while you dance with them. I and everyone else saw your display on the dance floor. Floor, I told her, or was I just imagining it? Chris, it's not what it looked like. I guess I should have asked Alex to move his hand, but it was all just a little innocent flirting. She told me, and the kiss was nothing more than him thanking me for dancing with him. I left to look for you right after that, and it took you. I spent 2 hours looking for you because you weren't answering your phone. I had to find someone to give me a lift home. I bet you know who it was. It was Alex, and nothing happened. She tried to reassure me as I started to walk away. She said, nothing happened, Chris. I asked how long it had been. How long has what been? I said, walking up to my new and permanent room. God damn it, Chris. I didn't do anything. I spent the whole day in bed on Sunday thinking about how my life had turned out. I have 2 kids who I only hear from when they want something, and a wife who I basically live with like a sister. I needed to get away for a few days. Our lake cabin is about an hour's drive from the house. It was my parents', and when they passed on, I bought out my brother's share and redid the interior. On Monday, I threw together a few things and headed out. I made a quick call to work, and I was on my own for the next 4 days. I just needed time alone to sort out a few things without Sarah hovering. As soon as I opened the door, I could tell something was wrong. I hadn't been there in at least 8 months, and when I left, the place was spotless. Someone had been there since then. There was an empty bottle of wine on the counter, and after a quick inspection, I found that our bed had been slept in. Not only had it been slept in, but it had also been enjoyed. Someone had also had some fun on the bed. I could still see the ring left from what was the wet spot on the white sheet. Well, I now know where, and I've got a pretty good idea with whom. I said to myself, as I dragged the mattress to the door and tossed it out on the lawn. My heart was pounding, and I was sweating. I sat down on a chair on the porch and said to myself, "Buckets, Chris, old buddy, it looks like you've been replaced." I started to get angry again. The hell with all of them. I don't need them. I used to, but not anymore. I told myself this over the next 4 days. I made up a list of what I wanted out of life. I decided to go, and none of it included any of my family. It was like a bucket list without having to kick the bucket. I got home late Friday afternoon, but Sarah was nowhere to be found. She never came home that night, and by Saturday afternoon, I decided to smoke a rack or two of ribs and wait for her. I was looking forward to her explanation of where she'd been for the past 2 days when all hell broke loose and I had my heart attack. That brings me to where I am currently. I finally called Paul from the rehab center to tell him I was still alive and kicking. They wouldn't put my calls through, he told me. "Paul, how are you feeling?" "Me, better, but still pretty weak. It looks like I'm going to be laid up for a couple of months. I need Lily to bring by my laptop so I can keep in touch and updated." "Do you think that's wise?" He said, "You know, your wife was here the other day. She took something off your desk. I think it was that picture of you too." "How are you doing?" "Never better," I replied. "Just have Lily drop off my computer, and please don't tell anyone where I am. I don't need any visitors. I'm making the most of our health insurance. I joke that it's there for a reason. Just get better and let me know if you need anything." After the second week, they tried to work me to death in the gym. Now they're trying to feed me. I was eating less than a few scraps of food. I've seen bigger appetizers. I said to myself, looking at my dinner plate, that I was exercising 4 times a day and eating 5 meals a day, which a baby couldn't survive on, but I was losing weight after about 5.5 weeks. I was less crabby and into the groove. The food was bad, and there was never enough, but I liked what was happening to me. I could walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes without oxygen. My trousers were loose around my middle, and for the first time in a long time, I started feeling better about myself. "Damn it, I can do this," I told myself, when the Goodwill truck pulled into the driveway. Sarah thought they were just using it to turn around Mrs. Davis, the driver. "Yes, I'm Mrs. Davis. I've been given a pickup order with instructions to get with you," he told her. "I never ordered a pickup," she replied. "I know that. My husband Chris Davis initiated it. The note said to pick up all the clothes that belonged to my husband. It explained that they weren't already boxed up, so it asked if I could show them where things were so we could get started. We've still got one more pickup this afternoon." She showed them Chris's closet and dresser in their bedroom, and took one of the workmen downstairs to where his winter clothes were stored. It took them just under an hour to get everything boxed up and loaded into the truck. She signed their receipt and got her copy before they drove off. What on earth is he doing? After the argument in his room, she realized she wasn't allowed to see or speak to Chris while he was in hospital. The doctor wouldn't tell her how he was doing or when he would be released. When Chris wouldn't see David or Natalie, she really started to worry. She knew he was angry with her, but that wasn't an excuse. She hadn't seen his kids on Tuesday, so she snuck into the hospital and climbed the stairs to his floor. She knew the nurse wasn't going to keep her out this time, so she waited until the nurse was at the other end of the hall and then ran into Chris's room, bursting through the door. "Why won't you talk to me?" she shouted, stunned. The woman looked at her and replied, "Because I don't know you." She was trying to figure out what on earth this woman was doing in her room. "All right, where have you moved Chris Davis?" she shouted to the nurse at the front desk. "I'm sorry, he's gone," the nurse replied, her eyes tearing up. "They do with his body. I'm his wife, damn it, I have a right to know." She got angry again through her tears when I said he was gone. "I meant he checked out 2 days ago. If you want any more information, you'll have to go down to the office. So, if that's all, I have a floor of sick people to take care of." I told her that the business office said Chris had been discharged and sent to a rehab clinic, but they weren't at liberty to tell her where patient's orders were. She said, "Great, back to square one," and walked out the door, sitting in her car. She planned her next move. Chris was right. She had given up on him. A long time ago, he'd put on a lot of weight. Whenever she mentioned it, he'd tell her not to nag him. When they did have sex, he was like a huge sack of potatoes lying on top of her. She'd tell him he was crushing her, and he'd get upset and try to move his arms or elbows. By that time, she was happy to have him finished because sex with him was no longer enjoyable. When he even mentioned the word sex, her stomach would tighten up. They did it maybe once a month, and that was only after he whined about it for a day or two. She guessed you could call it pity sex, because although he got off, she was starting to get really frustrated. And that's when Alex came into the picture. She first met Alex when they joined the country club. They had a dinner and dance once a month, and he would always come alone during the night. He would dance with all the available women as the evenings progressed. Chris would be they'd go out drinking or feeding his face, and Alex and Sarah would dance the night away. It had been a long time since anyone had held her like that. Before long, the routine became one of dancing a few numbers, and then sitting and talking on the patio until it was time to leave, or until she saw Chris looking for her. After a couple of months, they met for lunch one Saturday afternoon while Chris was off golfing. They had a couple of glasses of wine and everything just seemed so right. They ended up in the back seat of his car making out like a couple of teenagers. They did everything there was to do without taking their clothes off. She gave him an Aussie kiss, and he fingered her until she climaxed at least twice. It had been a long time since she'd felt this way. They straightened their clothes, kissed goodbye, and she headed back to the house. She didn't feel guilty until she was in the shower trying to get herself off again while thinking about Alex. What was she doing? Fooling around with some guy in the back seat of his car. And now she was trying to get off while thinking about him, instead of her husband. How sick is that? She said to herself. Getting disgusted at what she was doing. The problem was she no longer felt sexually attracted to her husband. She nagged Chris for the next 2 weeks about his weight and tried to tell him how sexy he'd be if he lost 60 pounds, but he never got the hint. He just got angry with her again. Everything came crashing down when he wanted to fool around one night after dinner. It was a disaster of a session, and he got mad and went into. She felt bad, but not that bad. He slept in the spare room that night and was gone before she got up the next day. She had the dark brown touch the following morning at work. Everything she touched turned to. She was feeling sorry for herself and did something stupid. She emailed Chris and basically she told him it was all his fault for walking out on her. He came back with a real eye-opener though. Whomever she was cheating with, she'd better stop if she still wanted to stay married. There was no way he could have known about that. However, if she'd been looking after business at home, it never would have happened. They didn't have sex or anything like that. It was just a bit of fooling around. She guessed she shouldn't have answered his email when she was angry. She called him all sorts of names. She told him she'd never cheated on him. If he weren't so overweight, they'd have more sex. She now realized that she was basically pushing him away. She guessed he was tired of arguing. That's when he replied that maybe he should stay permanently in the guest room. She no longer wanted him and things were spiraling out of control. When Chris got home, they had a huge argument. They threw accusations at each other and he went one way and she went the other. She slept alone that night and for many nights after that. It was the night of the charity auction that they finally apologized to each other. It had been tearing her apart. But she figured they were both too set in their ways to admit they were wrong or to identify the real underlying problem. They had a great dinner. Chris danced with her and then decided to socialize with his friends. She made the mistake of dancing with Alex. They danced a little too close and out on the patio. He told her he wanted to take it to the next level and then kissed her. She told him it had been a mistake and that she would never cheat on her husband. She left him there, licking his wounds. She never saw Chris leave, nor did anyone else. The parking lot attendant told her he had left about an hour earlier. Earlier when she called him, it went straight to voicemail. She was annoyed and had one too many drinks before realizing she'd have to find some way home. Alex came over and asked what was the matter. Chris got angry for some reason and left. He didn't answer his phone. "I need to find a way home," she said. At the auction, he offered to give her a lift home. She shot him a look and said, "I'll keep my hands to myself." He assured her she'd drunk half a bottle of wine by the time they left. On the drive home, she started getting angry again. How could he just leave her there? She fumed. She guessed Alex saw how angry she was. He told her to relax when he pulled into the parking lot by the lake. She was surprised, but when he reached over to kiss her, she didn't stop him. The only reason they didn't go all the way that night was because a police car was making its rounds through the parking lot. When he hit the car with his spotlight, she sobered up. "Alex, take me home now," she demanded when she got home. She thanked him and ran to the house. She was almost sober, but still angry. When Chris accused her of cheating, she lost it. What hurt her the most was when he asked her when she had given up on their marriage. She broke down and started to cry, telling him that she'd never cheated on him, but he no longer believed her. On Sunday, Chris never left his room and she didn't push it. She figured they'd have words on Monday and wanted to make sure she had all her ducks in a row. When he didn't come home on Monday night, she just thought it was another one of his games, was his way of punishing her when he didn't come home on Tuesday. She called his assistant, Lily, and was told that he had taken a couple of days vacation. She thought to herself, well, can play that game, and left on Wednesday to spend a couple of days with her daughter up at college. They had a great time bonding and even had a girls' night out with a couple of her friends on Friday night. Saturday morning she woke up with a hangover and an upset stomach. "I guess I'm too old for that kind of partying anymore," she said, getting ready to leave. She said goodbye to her daughter, thanked her for the good time, and she drove home and had barely got out of her car when her neighbor came running over. Chris had been taken by ambulance to the hospital that morning. She told her the front door was shut, but the lock was broken. She ran inside and saw a few things had been moved around and could smell smoke. The coals on the grill were almost out, but there were 2 slabs left. She took them off, put them in the refrigerator, and opened the yellow pages. There were only 2 hospitals in their area. She called Mercy General and got through to the operator. Chris had been admitted, but they wouldn't give her any details over the phone. She changed and headed out. She was having a triple bypass. She asked how long he'd be in surgery. She was told it'd be about an hour. She was told there was nothing she could do but wait. "He's got a great doctor, and we caught it in time. From surgery, he'll go to post-op, and from there, he'll be assigned a room. Lounge? I'll come and get you when they're finished." Can you say had, because that's exactly what she felt like. He could have died. She kept saying over and over to herself when she got him home, she was going to show him how much she loved him. They'd get through this together, but she wasn't given the chance. Finally, I managed to track him down to the rehab clinic, but he still refused to see her. She was getting pretty annoyed. Chris was taking it to the extreme. He must have found out somehow about what happened with Alex. She had no idea how, but someone must have seen them, and told him she just needed the chance to tell him that nothing really happened, but he was avoiding her like crazy. Paul and Lily weren't much help, but when she found out he had his laptop, she sent him an email. It wasn't like her usual one, though. It said, "Chris, I love and miss you, honey. I don't understand why you won't let me see you. I know we've had some issues lately and we've both said things in anger, but I love you and I still believe you love me. Please give me the chance to explain anything you think I've done, or not done. We've both said things in anger recently, but I love you and I still believe you love me. Please give me the chance to explain anything you think I've done or not done, Chris. I need you, and want to grow old and gray with you.